About 5 years ago, Johnnie Ray cried his way to fame and fortune with two records, Cry and The Little White Cloud That Cried. They both sold over 1 million, and he hasn't had much to cry about since then. At 29, Johnnie Ray is nearly as well known in England, France, South Africa, Japan, and Australia as he is in this country. But it wasn't always that easy. Trying to find almost any sort of work in the movies, burlesque, even in the offbeat nightclubs, either as a singer or a piano player. But today, Johnnie Ray owns a ranch in Oregon, where he grew up. And he has an apartment in that tall building in mid-Manhattan. If he didn't get caught in the New York traffic tonight, he should be home from the first show at the Latin Quarter, where he opened last night. Good evening, Johnny.
Good evening, Ed.
I see you made it. How'd the show go tonight?
It went very well, thank you.
Opening night last night was terrific, I hear.
Well, fortunately, it was very, very wonderful, very heartening to be able to come back to New York and open and have as much success as we did last night. The reviews were very fine. I feel very good about it.
Johnny, do audiences in nightclubs vary from night to night?
Yes, they do. Matter of fact, I would say Saturday night is probably the most difficult evening because from the performer's standpoint, that's the night when everybody really goes out to have a good time, not necessarily to see a performer, but to enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
It makes it a little rougher.
Well, Johnny, quite a few people have spent a pretty fair amount of money to hear you sing in the past few years. How would you describe your singing?
Well, I'd probably think of it more as blood, guts, and thunder, actually. I never thought of myself as being a singer. I always think of myself as more or less being a performer.
Well, you're known for your crying routine. Is that what you mean by showmanship or performing?
Well, I feel that in a performance, the primary necessity for the success of a performer is to project sincerity. And in that you employ an awful lot of things that go into your work, physical things, which you try to convey with your sincerity to an audience, which in the end evolves as a performance.
I see. How did you develop this style?
Well, I think it involves a great deal of things. Watching other great performers of our time, like Sophie Tucker, great performers like Jimmy Durante. I could go on and on with different things that watching them over a period of years that you learn, things like the way you use your hands and different things like that.
Could you demonstrate a bit of this for us, Johnny?
Well, you learn to try to, through a gesture, try to convey a certain feeling to an audience, or a certain emotion, whether it be happy or heartbreaking or sad or anything else. And then what golfers would call, I guess, body English, well, a performer tries to do the same thing with your face, with your hands, and even to the use of your legs and your feet and different things like that.
Johnny, that rug you're standing on, I assume it's something you picked up on one of your trips?
Oh, yes, this is one of those tiger skin rugs I picked up in South Africa over last Christmas. We were down on a tour. Back here, I have a very peculiar little instrument which is called a bamboo lin, which picked up in Manila. The man who presented it to us, I was told, was the only man in the world who makes them.
Yeah?
And I was also told the only other American to ever be presented one was Vice President Nixon. So, of course, I was very proud of it. I carted this thing all the way across the Pacific to the United States. I can't play it, but makes a very peculiar sound.
Exotic noise anyway, isn't it?
And here's some Zulu war drums that I brought back from South Africa. I can't play these things either, but at least I give you a different thing of what they sound like. Oh, I almost forgot. Over here, we have very peculiar little instrument from South Africa that the natives use. It's an original thumb piano, and it's used for rhythm or something, and you use it by stroking your fingers. And if you listen close, maybe you can tell what the sound is like.
Oh, yes.
Very interesting. I get a kick out of it.
Johnny, I got the impression you have no regrets about going into show business. What started you wanting to become an entertainer, anyway?
Well, when I was very young, about 11 years old, a teacher told my folks that I was losing my hearing and suggested that perhaps I should be put into a deaf and dumb school. It, of course, made quite an impression on a kid my age at that time. And, of course, my parents had me fitted for a hearing aid, and sort of, I guess, sort of feel like you wanted to belong or be something. Well, I started putting shows on in the backyard of our home in my hometown, Dallas, Oregon, and used to do it for all the neighborhood kids, and you might say that's how it started.
Mm. Johnny, I know you set up a foundation devoted primarily to help children who are hard of hearing. Tell us a little about it, will you?
Well, we started this foundation a few years ago. My manager and the people around me helped me set it up. We worked right in direct communication with the Central Institute of the Deaf in St. Louis. And at first we thought the best idea was to try to provide hearing aids for children and kids who couldn't afford it. And then through experience and guidance of other established hearing foundations, excuse me, we found that we could best accomplish our purpose by not only providing that, but sound equipment to schools that couldn't afford it, and in the countries that we felt needed it, as well as here at home, and in providing scholarships to established people to help teach the deaf children, which is, well, it's something that we try to do. Of course, here in New York City, I have sort of my pet school called PS 47, where every year we try to go down to Christmas and have a Christmas party for the kids there. And it's a big kick to me to be able to see that over year from year how they improve in their attitude and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just changes and picks up and how well they do.
It must be a very satisfying thing. Johnny, along with your other interest, you're a composer, too. Which tune is your particular favorite?
Well, I would say a song that I wrote called The Little White Cloud Cried is my favorite, because to this day it's still my mom and dad's favorite of anything that I ever composed. And in terms of fantasy, it expressed sort of a little philosophy of my own that I try to follow.
Well, would you do a little bit of it for us and for your mom and dad?
Sure. I realize we don't have too much time to be together here in this show, and I do have to be getting back for the Latin Quarter for our second show, so I'll only play the last few bars of it. It's all right.
All right, fine.
He asked me if I'd tell all my world just how hard those little clouds try. That's how I know I'll always remember that little white cloud that sat right down and cried.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Tell me, have you been caught up in this rock and roll craze?
Well, yes, but to be very frank with you, Ed, I think I can either take it or leave it, frankly.
Well, I suppose when you want to get away from this hectic life in New York and around the world, you can always go back to the peace and quiet of Oregon.
Well, I don't know. As much as you can take the boy out of Oregon, you can't take the organ out of the boy, still, when we have such a different change of life, of doing things and of working, I think it'd be kind of difficult to go back to that. I'm pretty happy just now.
How often do you get back home to see your family these days, Johnny?
Well, I very, very rarely get a chance to visit Mom and Dad on a ranch up in Oregon, but whenever possible and practical, I have Mom and Dad come and visit me wherever I'm appearing. Like very, very recently, I played 4 weeks at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas, and I had my Mom and Dad come down, and they spent a week with me, and we spent a lot of time together. And then my sister, Elma, came down to Miami Beach when I played down there for Mr. Lou Waller's, the Latin Quarter there. And so I get to see my family pretty regularly.
Tell me, Johnny, does it make you nervous performing before your family when you know they're out there in the audience?
Yeah. Well, especially so with my family, but it's the same way if I have a close friend or somebody that I'm close to that I know very well, or if it's another performer. It's a real thing if another performer is sitting out front. Like Sammy Davis Jr. was at the opening last night for the second show, and as much as I'm friends with Sammy, it makes me nervous to have people like that there.
Well, Johnny, I'm sure a lot of your colleagues were looking in tonight. Thank you very much for letting us come and visit you. Good night, Johnnie Ray.
Good night.
Good night.